it's a way to retain students in the state of Virginia by having them start as an intern. Hopefully they would be retained as employees after they graduate. So it was actually a strategy from the General Assembly to help with that sort of brain drain, I guess you could say, where people were leaving the state.
Welcome to Being the Change, the official podcast of James Madison University, brought to you by Madison Magazine. Each episode brings to you stories of how members of the JMU community combine intellect with action to live lives of purpose and meaning. That's Being the Change.
What's up, JMU? Andy Perrine here. Welcome to Being the Change. Today's episode is about a really interesting and I think promising program called the Virginia Talent and Opportunity Partnership, and even more specifically, the Valley Internship Experience Work Group. And with us today are Mary Sullivan, and she's the VTOP, which is Virginia Talent and Opportunity Partnership Project Coordinator at JMU. And also with us at Mary's invitation is Ross Ruffing, and he's the Business Development Manager at Ryzing Technologies, which is an engineering group located in Staunton, Virginia, and you'll hear more about the kind of things that they do. Very interesting company, but he's one of the participating employers in all of this and is one of the beneficiaries of the program. But to begin with, I'd like to set the table based on a couple facts, and then Mary, you can dive into how VTOP and VIEW are getting into attacking this reality. And the Virginia Chamber of Commerce, in its Blueprint Virginia 2025, found that the top concern of Virginia businesses and employers are finding access to talent, the number one concern. And Ross, would you agree?
I agree.
and that more than 50% of Virginia graduates who completed an internship while they were a student receive better job offers than if they hadn't. And this is a finding by SCHEV in a study done in 2021. SCHEV is the State Council of Higher Education of Virginia. But countervailing that fact, less than 50% of Virginia students completed an internship while they were students. So this entire program is aimed at narrowing all of these gaps. So, Mary, if you would, why don't you give us a little bit of background on the mission of the program?
Absolutely. So VTOP is a statewide initiative, and the goal is that every college student, both 2-year and 4-year college students, will get an opportunity to have either an internship or some kind of a work-based learning experience as part of their program. And that will help narrow that gap and help the students be prepared for those jobs after college, and also will help the companies to access that talent that they're looking for.
And this is really consonant with what we believe is the essence of a JMU education, a more engaged learning. And in fact, being the change, we define it as intellect and action equals being the change. So it really is right up the alley of what we're interested in talking about. And how does this align with the Commonwealth's goals for workforce development?
Right. So one of the reasons this initiative, it is supported by the General Assembly. This was part of their strategy. A while back, there were actually more people leaving the state of Virginia. The population was actually diminishing, and they decided that one way to counteract that was to increase internships because actually, I think about 80% of students who have an internship, they're actually offered a job after they're done.
While they're students.
Yes, and so it's a way to retain students in the state of Virginia. By having them start as an intern, hopefully they would be retained as employees after they graduate. So it was actually a strategy from the General Assembly to help with that sort of brain drain, I guess you could say, where people were leaving the state. I think that trend has actually not so much. Right. I don't think we are losing population, but there is still that desire to help both the employers and the students make these connections while the students are here, and let those students get some real world experience as part of their degree programs.
Well, I know Governor Youngkin's a big interest of his is that work-based learning be a much bigger part of the student experience, and that allows students, once they graduate, to show up work ready.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, it provides a different perspective for the student as well.
Yeah.
I think we can all relate to growing up somewhere and eventually wanting to get on out of there.
I think we can all relate to that, Ross.
Even sometimes the folks where you went to college, a lot of people don't intend to stay there.
Right.
And something I've learned over the years is your college alumni network can be a really great place to feed onto for different jobs and opportunities. And one thing I've learned with some of the interns we've had is we provide a different perspective to the people that grew up there in Staunton, that, may be thinking, let me get up out of here. There's no opportunities here.
Right.
And then they do an internship with a company like ours and they realize, oh, there's cool things going on. And people actually moved from California and Colorado and different places and ended up in the Shenandoah Valley because it's really a great place to live and raise a family.
Well, and you bring up a very interesting fact about the Valley, and which has become even more widely understood after the pandemic, now that workplace and where you live have become somewhat disassociated. Ryzing Technologies is an engineering, fabrication, prototyping, testing company that you wouldn't expect to find in a town like Staunton. How did you wind up there?
It's kind of a roundabout story. There's actually quite a bit of textile manufacturing and production that happens in the Shenandoah Valley.
Yeah.
So there was some pull here for that reason. But really, it's a little bit more of a history of where my bosses started out in California at a company called Vertigo, which built hang gliders, if you can believe. Over the course of their time at their company there, they ended up working on inflatables, and eventually the company that they were working for was purchased. And then through multiple other acquisitions, they were moved out here to Staunton. There was a company down in Rafine, BaseX, if anybody out there is familiar with it. I'm sure some of your listeners probably are. And part of that acquisition, they ended up here. And eventually, just through all those acquisitions, the company wasn't innovating as much as they would have preferred.
Right.
And so they went off on their own. And when they just were deciding where to move or where to locate the company, this place checked all the boxes and was a great place to live. Most importantly, the affordability and being a great place to live was paramount for us. But really, we're hop skip from DC. We're hop skip from a lot of the textile manufacturing that happens in North Carolina as well. So with all those things combined, along with just mountains, beauty, and
it's a quaint little town too.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's great. Well, now I'm going to take a little bit of a step back, Mary. This was created by the General Assembly. I think it was funded in 18 and it began to roll out in 19. But the partners that are involved are, I mentioned the State Council of Higher Education of Virginia before, but the Virginia Chamber of Commerce Foundation is also involved. But even more interestingly, and this gets at how the thing is organized, is that the Virginia Business Higher Education Council, which is behind Go Virginia, is also a partner in getting VTOP out there. And so Go Virginia has broken up the state into different regions, and Harrisonburg is in Region 8, and you're in charge of running Region 8 for VTOP and VUE. So tell me how that works, Mary, and how you're running up and down the valley. Yeah.
Right, and I am running up and down the valley. It's really a lot of fun. So the Valley Internship Experience Work Group, or VUE, we're actually we're a collaborative, and we're made up of a lot of different representatives. So it's not just me trying to do all this on my own. So I do have members from several chambers of commerce on the work group. I have members from economic development. We actually have a total, in addition to JMU, there's 11 other colleges and universities in Region 8, including 3 community colleges. So I do have a representative from many of those higher education institutions as well. Some people from other business support groups like entrepreneurship. So there's a lot of us out there working, I guess an ecosystem is a proper term to talk about that, but we're all working together because this is something that kind of like it takes a village to build this.
Well, and that was one of the goals behind it, was to create an ecosystem.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so we're all working collectively to make those connections between the employers and the colleges. In fact, with all 12 of those colleges and universities, there's over 47,000 students
Wow.
in the Shenandoah Valley going to school. And so it's like, wow, wouldn't that be nice if some of those 47,000 students would actually stay here in the Valley after they graduate? I mean, some, of course, a lot of them do, but as Ross was kind of saying, a lot of the students, especially if they're not from here originally, they have no idea what is here in the Valley. They're not exposed to the companies. Maybe some of the companies are smaller companies like Ryzing Technologies. And so the students have not heard of those companies. So that is part of what we're doing, is trying to have these internships so students do get exposure to all the different opportunities that are here in the Valley.
Well, and it's an interesting and kind of different issue that we confront in the Valley as opposed to schools that are near more urban areas, is that things are more spread out. Companies may be less well known, but students come here for the fact that it is away from places like that. So in Region 8, a program like this has got to be even more vital than in some other areas, because internships are harder to find around here.
They are. And in fact, that's really been a big part of my focus, is trying to connect with the employers and basically encourage more employers to host interns. So I've been going at it with trying to explain to them how would they benefit from having an intern, first of all, because it could be very beneficial to not just the students, but to the businesses to have these interns. I mean, one common use of interns is that companies use this as a recruiting tool for full-time, just like Ross was saying. He actually had an intern who started who is now a full-time employee. And that is a common reason for companies to host interns as a recruiting method. And in fact, 80% of businesses say that is their most effective recruiting method, is actually hosting interns. But then, not all companies or organizations are able to offer a full-time job.
Right.
But still, interns can help them just on various projects that they have, just another set of hands that can help them get the work done, basically expand their capacity to get things done. So anyway, I've really been focusing on just emphasizing that to companies and encouraging more to go ahead, let's give this a try. Why don't you host some interns? And then also not just explaining the benefits, but giving them some resources and tools to help them get started with that or expand what they're already doing. And in some cases, there are businesses they have been hosting, but they're coming to me and saying, we're doing this, but we think we might be able to do better. We want to do a better job. Can you help us with some resources on what are the best practices? How can we make this really effective?
Well, Ross, when we were chatting earlier, you mentioned that you were initially interested in having interns, but this program helped you to expand that program.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Initially when I was going to my boss, looking at how many interns we could probably hire for the summer, I quickly realized that I couldn't hire as many as I wanted to.
Right.
And then through finding out about the VTOP program through Mary, it gave us the opportunity to hire twice as many.
That's great.
As we were, 1.5 to 3.
Right.
So I don't know what the math is on that. But one thing I wanted to add to what you said too, Mary, is that one of the critical components of this whole program is not just the resources and the money available, but also the education. As much as we wanted to have interns, I quickly realized that we had a lot to learn on how to manage an intern. Yeah. It's a different generation of people than perhaps I am at this point in my life.
It's hard to believe when that happens, isn't it, Ross?
It happens fast. It feels like after kids, it happens overnight.
And time keeps accelerating.
Right. But with that in mind, you don't always know the resources available, first of all. So then finding those resources and then learning that those resources are actually going to help you beyond just the financial side was really beneficial for us, because there's a whole program you have to go through to just get the money through VTOP that is an education-focused program that really helped us build a foundation of how should we best approach this. And it allowed me to be able to go around to the whole company and coach through some of those nuances of having an intern versus a full-time employee, and then coaching the interns through the process as well. So the additional resources beyond just the financial were very beneficial.
Well, tell us what were some of the insights you gained from the training part about how to bring interns. We in our shop we've got about 15 or 20 at a time, so we know how it goes. But tell me what you learned in the program.
15 would be overwhelming, but our company is about 10 people.
Uh-huh.
You know, a couple part-time in there that could make us flex up to 12 occasionally.
Sure.
But so adding 2 or 3 interns was a huge percentage of our staff.
Sure.
And we quickly realized that, you know, guiding on projects wasn't enough. We also have to coach them through, you know, how to be a good employee and, you know, obviously the
Show up
normal
on time.
things, showing up on time,
Right.
dress codes,
Right.
that sort of normal stuff. I just quickly learned that not everybody has had a job at this point in their life. And, you know, that's just the way things have gone, and neither good or bad. I think that it's something that is really speaks to the whole internship program in general, is we need to have a little bit of work experience before we go and actually start working.
Right.
And I think one of the things I had to coach our company on was like, hey, these are students. We're here to teach them as much as they're here to help us.
Right.
So that was probably the biggest learning overall.
And what kind of, I mean, I know you do some top secret stuff at Ryzing, but can you describe for us what you had some of them doing?
Sure. Well, one of our most exciting projects is some large high altitude decelerators that will be used to bring spacecraft back from outer space.
Mm-hmm.
The initial phase will be the boosters for certain rockets that will just be slowing down as they re-enter the atmosphere.
Right.
So it's these large toroidal structures, which is a donut shape. That's the technical term for a donut, in case.
Toroidal.
Toroid, yeah.
Thank you. We learned something new today at Being
So
the Change.
inflatable toroids, that's something that we do a lot of. And it's a really exciting project. So everybody wants to work on that. And we have some really awesome projects with the military too. For some reason, NASA has a cool factor that is hard for us all to explain quite sometimes.
Well, we've been attracted to it since we were kids.
Right, exactly. And we grew up in that whole era, you know. But we've seen that we need to help people focus on, you know, there's a lot of things that need done. We can't all just work on the cool stuff all the time. Right. So helping to balance that has also been an important aspect of it.
Toroidal. Next time Steve the engineer is here with us, he's in the office with me. I'll bring some glazed toroids to the office sometime soon. Or you like sprinkles, I think. Isn't that right? Well, Mary, how does JMU fit into this, and how does JMU support your work up and down the valley with all these other schools?
Right. So JMU is the host institution for the grant. The grant comes from SHEV, or the State Council for Higher Education in Virginia. Mm-hmm. So in all of the 9 regions throughout Virginia, there's one institution that kind of manages, holds the grant. And so, of course, JMU supports me. I'm a JMU employee.
Right.
We are our work group, our collaborative work group. We meet quarterly, and we normally we meet here at JMU because we are right in the middle of the region,
the crossroads of the valley.
Exactly. So JMU is vital. I have Libby Wesley. She is the director of the University Career Center.
She's been on the podcast.
She's okay, yeah, and she is the JMU representative as well as me on the work group. So she's representing JMU as far as the Career Center. So JMU does provide a lot of support.
Now, what are some of the biggest challenges facing VTOP going forward? I mean, we're shaking off the pandemic, hopefully, and kind of recovering. What are some of the challenges in workforce development, and how is VTOP involved in confronting those challenges?
Right. So I think probably one of the biggest challenges, which I've already spoken about a little bit, is just having more companies who are willing to host interns. If we want to meet our goal that every college student has an experience, we actually need more places for them to get that experience. Right. So that's a big challenge. We haven't talked specifically about the funding for small businesses, but that's Ryzing Technology has benefited from that.
Describe
I'll talk about
Ryzing.
that.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, one of the challenges is getting the word out that we have this funding. Right. We don't have a whole lot of employers that have taken advantage of this yet, compared to the amount of funding that's there.
Right.
So basically, Any employer that is 150 or fewer employees can access a 50% wage match for their interns. So just for an example, I'll just use a round number to make it easy.
Yeah.
If the company wants to pay an intern $20 an hour, the company ends up only having to pay $10, and then the state picks up the other $10.
That's huge.
So
especially for a business like Ryzing size.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. That was what I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
We were able to basically hire twice as many folks, and that
And
was
for
a huge
a
difference.
10-person shop, that's a double-digit percentage growth. Yeah.
Right. So that money is there. So if there's any small businesses listening, and they can be for-profit businesses or nonprofit. Nonprofit organizations are also eligible. The only smaller organizations that would not be eligible would be government-funded, or colleges are not eligible.
Right.
Of course, those are usually too large to qualify anyway.
And how are students finding out about these sorts of possibilities?
So the way, as far as the matching funds program,
Right.
there's also a staffing agency that gets involved. And so the staffing agency actually pretty much does the HR pieces for the company.
Okay.
The staffing agency will work with the company to create the position descriptions, and then the staffing agency posts them usually with the various colleges.
Wow, so it's just like outsourcing HR for Ryzing. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So the students would find out about the positions by looking at the different platforms, such as Handshake at
Right.
JMU. Mary Baldwin uses Handshake.
Sure.
Out of the 12 colleges in our region, about 5 of them use Handshake. So anyway, the staffing agency will post those positions
Right.
with the different colleges. So the students would find out about it just like they would find out about any other open position.
Got it. And our students use Handshake a great deal. And in fact, one of the senior execs at Handshake is a JMU alumna.
Okay.
I don't know if you knew that. Well, what's on the horizon for VTOP? And Ross, we also want to hear what's on the horizon for Ryzing.
Right. So again, we're emphasizing increasing these internships. One of the things that I'm doing locally, Ross mentioned the required training in order to get the matching funds for the smaller businesses. It's a free online course, so you can take it at your own pace. But one thing that I've been doing recently, I've been offering in-person sessions where we can actually go through the content in a shortened format. So it only takes about 2 hours. And so I've been planning, I have usually at least one session every month. I also do monthly webinars. We have another thing, Virginia recognizes the top employers for interns every year. So we do have, the nominations are open now to be nominating yourself for 2025 to be recognized as a top employer. So I hope you guys will nominate yourself, Ross.
That always feels a little weird.
But yeah, we'll do a recognition celebration here at JMU, and then there's a statewide celebration that happens. Virginia Intern Day is always the last Thursday in July, so we do some different celebrations around that time as well.
Well, this really sounds like the kind of program that a state that is really the number one state in the country for doing business, and I know this is one of the governor's top priorities is to maintain that status. As an employer, Ross, how does stuff like VTOP and VIEW make you feel about being located in a place like Virginia?
Very good. And one of the things that Mary and I have talked, off the side on is workforce development in general. Not just for our own company, but the whole community. If we don't have a backlog of folks that are trying to get jobs that are interesting and staying here in the Valley, we can't build as vibrant of a community,
Right.
and we can't build as good of businesses. So of course I'm curious and want to leverage the program more and more, have more interns, find individuals. But I also like to be a part of the community and think, how can we think about this workforce development piece of things in general? And that's where I think these types of programs, these type of resources, and really many more resources as well. One thing that I've found interesting, we do government contracts.
Right.
And a lot of folks don't even know that there's government contracts that are available to a small business of 10 people in the Shenandoah Valley.
Right.
And a lot of people have a certain view of the Raytheons and the Boeings of the world that are government contractors. So there's tons of resources across the federal government, state and local governments to help small businesses. And I want to see more people and more companies benefit from those. But the workforce piece is particularly important for the reasons I just said.
Yeah.
Building that vibrant community, creating a place where people can live, work, and play. That's a really good place to raise a family and live the way you want to.
Well, as I was looking at Ryzing Technologies website, I was really impressed that when you click on the Who We Are tab, it was very employee-centric. It wasn't about what you do, but it was about who you were.
I'm sure there's a few dogs on there too.
Well, Mary, if there are folks listening who want to get involved somehow, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, I would say go to the website virginiatop.org, because again, no matter where you are in Virginia, this is a statewide effort. And if you're at that website as well, there's a tab you can click on for your region. So if you're not in the Shenandoah Valley, you can find your local contact person.
It's actually a map that you can click on and shows you the region. Yeah,
absolutely. And then if you click on Region 8, which is Shenandoah Valley, there's also, I have a website that's housed at the JMU website. And then it's all the information about what's coming up locally.
Well, this is all so very promising. Mary and Ross, thank you so much for being on Being the Change.
Thank you.
And you're both working on Being the Change here in the Valley and beyond. So it's great to have you on. Listeners, if you have ideas for other episodes of Being the Change, you can reach us at beingthechange@jmu.edu. And until next time, go Dukes.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next time to hear another story of how members of the James Madison University community are being the change. Dive deeper and consume countless other stories at jmu.edu/Madison Magazine. Go Dukes!
The Being the Change podcast was conceived by Jim Heffernan, editor of Madison Magazine, and me, Andy Perrine, head of JMU Marketing. Thanks to Jenna Polk and the team at Rose Library Studios, where the show is recorded by Steve Adderton, the guy who also captures those amazing campus drone shots you see on Instagram. Original music by Neil Perrine, and episode production by the Downtown Creative. All of us involved in creating Being the Change are JMU alumni, and we bleed purple. You can find the Being the Change podcast on all popular platforms, where we hope you'll like, share, and subscribe.